Hello and welcome to video number 3 in my Cinderella live-action ball gown making reproduction. Somewhat not very accurate. I got a little burnt out after making the corset and the petticoat, which took 3 months. So I took a break and made a whole pile of shorts and some pajama pants and watched a really awesome eclipse.
It turned into a cloud watching party.
And now I am refreshed and ready to go. There is also a really big surprise at the end of this video, so you will want to stick around to find out. One more thing, I bought a throne on Facebook Marketplace like a year or 2 ago. I tried to sit in it in my Cinderella petticoat and really did not fit. It's kind of a huge skirt. So I bought a princess settee, which really should fit the skirt. It's like a mini couch. On Bella May's super secret fabric information, which you have to get on her website, it says 2 layers of white organza, but I may see if I can get away with 1 because this skirt is already going to be huge.
Time to cut the skirt! And I am not wearing the right pajamas. Starting off on the wrong foot already. Speaking of feet, I made these Cinderella shoes a few years ago by gluing rhinestones to some thrifted heels. It's the best I could do since glass wasn't an option. Anyway, I taped out the skirt panels on my rug so that I could cut out 3 of them at a time. They are 8 inches on the top and 45 inches at the bottom, and I drew an arc for the bottom and I made it 51 inches long, which is too long so I can trim it later. I cut a pile of panels and sewed them together. And because this is organza and it frays like crazy, I trimmed those edges and encased them with a French seam. Before sewing up the back seam, I tried it on to make sure I liked how full it was. And I rolled the edges of the opening to reduce fraying. Organza can be a bit of a nightmare, and I made 2 whole wedding dress petticoats from it. And with the first layer a success, I cut out the iridescent, lilac, and aqua layers. I'm going to leave the top layer for later as it is my first time using silk and I am a bit nervous.
I thought I would start off this beautiful morning with a quick test of my new RC boat that I found at a garage sale for $5. And Emmy had slightly different plans.
I stitched each of these together with French seams while my soggy dog continued lounging in the sun on her balcony. And let's not tell Emmy about the rodents outside. And we are definitely not going to talk about this ever again. Also, I ran a gathering stitch along the waist of each skirt. I did not spring for the $170 yard super organza for the purple and aqua layers because I did not have an extra $5,780 just laying around, but I did splurge for the top layer. It's not exactly the cornflower blue silk crepelin from the movie, but I was excited to find some periwinkle silk organza. I cut 11 panels of the top skirt using my tape as a vague guide since the fabric wasn't that wide. Also, the waist is longer on some of the later panels. And I saved the scraps for later. There might be a dog dress in Emmy's future. I ironed all 11 panels and hung them up so the bias can stretch.
After I finished cutting out all the skirt panels yesterday, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to have enough. So I may have to reorder more of this fabric, but I'm gonna keep going and see what I have when it's all stitched together and then make a decision. And also, I got good news about the surprise at the end of the video yesterday, so if you see me smiling randomly, I'm so excited. It has nothing to do with the fact that I may have to buy more fabric. So I'm gonna keep plowing ahead.
We did some plain spotting from the sewing room balcony, and then we got to rhinestoning. I bought a pack of 25,000 crystal AB gems in 3, 4, and 5mm sizes and used E6000 fabric fuse to glue them down. I dabbed glue down and added some crystals with my new wax crystal pen. This went on for a while, and you'd think I'd be an expert at this given my history as a figure skater who made her own dresses, but I have never had any luck with hotfix crystals. Also, my favorite dress was sparkle-free. I alternated glue blobs and sticking crystals of all sizes, avoiding the side seams and hems for now, and also, I may have gone a bit too heavy-handed with the crystals. I'll try to tone it down for the rest of them. But don't worry, I would not rhinestone without full supervision. After using tweezers for my last rhinestoning, I invested in a wax pen and these little trays that help keep the stones right sides up.
It is time to turn this lovely sparkly pile of lumpy fabric into a skirt.
I did that by stitching each panel wrong sides together. That's right, another French seam. What can I say, they are great with organza. And when we headed out for our afternoon walk, we found Daisy, our neighbor's dog, over by our house. So we walked her back home, and I have to say, I've really missed walking 2 dogs. This reminds me of my phone background for almost 12 years now, which is Emmy looking up at my first dog, Dolly. I ironed my seams flat while trying to avoid rhinestones. I'd mostly kept rhinestones away from those seams. Speaking of which, I went back and put a few stones on those seams.
The back of the skirt is not sewn up yet, but I'm gonna gather the top edge and lay it on here just to see if I like how the width is and if I need to order any more fabric. I really hope I don't have to because it's expensive. And then if that passes, I'll sew up the back and get started on the waistband. And if not, I will find something else to do while this fabric ships to me.
I quickly gathered the top edge and threw it on the dress form.
Oh yeah, that's enough fabric.
So I French seamed up the back and did a double fold hem on the opening. The silk does fray, but a lot less than the cheap polyester organza.
I'm going to do the waistband next because I don't want to hem it until after everything's all set up and then I can just trim the hem level. I need to know how long to make the waistband, which means I had to put the corset back on. And I thought I did measure this last time I had it on, but I can't find my notes anywhere, so gotta try it on again and actually write down the measurement this time. I know, it's not like a super tight lacing corset, but I prefer to be comfortable. Alright, that's 25.5, so I'll go with 25.5. My plan to cover up the gap in the back is to have the waistband have an 1-inch overlap where the blue top layer goes to the edge but the other colors do not, so it's kind of like the blue will overlap and the clasp will just be slightly that way. So I'm going to cut a 6-inch by 27.5-inch rectangle, and I'm not all that confident that I'm going to be able to fit all of these skirts into one waistband, but we will see.
I got this bridal satin to make the cartoon Cinderella dress, but I got distracted.
This is a whole lot of skirt.
This project is really too big though, and I knew that it would be, which is why when I made this last time I made a short version. And Emmy was a pumpkin. I even used the simplicity pattern for the bodice, but made the skirt a circle skirt. Time to layer the skirt layers and see if I'll be able to stuff them all into one waistband. I basted these 4 layers together and serged it because all of the layers were fraying so badly. I wanted to ensure that the top layer was neat and all the gathers looked good, so I meticulously pinned and stitched it onto the waistband by itself. And it turned out great on the first try! Are you surprised? Because I was. So I pinned on the other 4 skirt layers, also keeping them away from the edges.
This waistband is ready to stitch. However, it is a beautiful day outside, and I have a dog who wants to do something. Hey, Emmy. Do you want to go to the park? Yeah? Come on. I gotta go now.
The next day, it was getting very hot in here.
You a happy girl, Emmy?
Emmy is enjoying the sun until she got too hot. I stitched the other skirt layers down, but my machine was too light to stay still against all of this fabric. I stitched some waistband stiffener in with the same problem. I also stitched the ends of the waistband before folding over the interfacing, folding the raw edge over, and hand stitching the inside. I stitched one side of the skirt hooks on for now, but I want to be efficient about putting all of these layers on and wanted to whip up a bodice mock-up first.
Listen, you come back with babies, and I might give you food.
I'm not wearing the shoes, so everything's on the ground, but this is so heavy. Oh my gosh. And big.
So my plan was to make the waistband my corset measurements, but I forgot about all the petticoat layers. I'm just gonna ignore that for now. The bodice mock-up number 1 needed some tweaks, and mock-up number 3 had a front zip just to make things way easier.
Now I really need to try this on with all the skirts to make sure that fits properly. It's a big pile. Also, my audiobook from Libby is supposed to be returned to the library about a half an hour ago, but it's still playing, so I'm afraid to pause it because it will actually go back then.
Fashion police, anyone? I actually managed to wiggle in like this.
I can't see it.
I checked the footage and it passed, but then I discovered a bigger problem.
Gosh, I hope that's on the outside. It's not on the outside. It is on the inside of my window. I gotta go do something about that. We do not have a ladder tall enough. I have these 3 options as Cinderella linings. I have another one that does not have Cinderella on it, so that didn't make it. So I made an Instagram poll about it. And he's getting higher. I'm short. And he's up there. I can't do much about it. So there's actually some texture on the bodice and it is not just organza overlay on top of something. I don't have anything like this, so I have this blue from the other Cinderella project that I decided not to do. And I have the iridescent organza, and I have more of the skirt organza that I can overlay on top to kind of get it to be the same color, but that wouldn't get the texture because this is flat. But I have this crinkle organza, which if I overlay, you can see the texture on it. So I can use scraps of that, or I can use the flat stuff. I'm gonna go do some other things right now though, because my RC boat definitely needs more use. And pick up with this and this tomorrow. And maybe that will be dead. There's no sign yet of the hornet, but I do have this lovely lump on the floor, and also this lovely lump. So I guess I will get back to doing bodice stuff now. I'm still ignoring the skirt problem. I've been thinking all night, and I think I'm going to use a crinkle organza. And it's time to check on my lining pole. Alright, well, that is a clear winner. We're going with number 3, which is this one. Also, I went to the library. I managed to just barely squish everything onto this 22-inch wide piece of fabric. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's 20 inches, not 22. And I've positioned, oh, it's really stupid. Positioned, there's a Cinderella right here, and I think there's one around here. I need a minute to stop bleeding before I touch the pretty fabric.
I was definitely still bleeding, but it didn't touch the fabric, so it's okay. This is really cute fabric. I wish I had more of it. I don't even know where I got it from. I ironed interfacing onto the back of the blue satin. I'm cutting it out on the bias, aka 45 degrees to the grain line to give it a bit more stretch. I know the original was cut on the straight grain, but they didn't make an entirely upcycled petticoat, so I get to do what I want. And I used Bella May's pattern to make the petticoat, but not the bodice. Why? Because I had already bought one from a different creator before Bella May published hers. I have wanted to make this dress for a very long time. You know, since I saw the movie in theaters. I marked 3 boning channels on the center front and 1 on each side front. I stitched both sides and the top to keep the boning in place. I pinned the lining pieces together, matching up the marks, and stitched them in place. I ironed the seam allowance flat and stitched them into more boning channels. I'm using plastic boning, so having 2 makes it stiffer. I also stitched in a waist tape at the, well, waist. On my way home the other day, a fox ran in front of my car, and 10 minutes later, he was at our house.
Fox.
It was probably looking for this. I hope it catches some because the chipmunk and squirrel alarm goes off constantly. Not that you noticed the fox. Now for the outside layers. I added the crinkle iridescent organza on top of the blue satin, and then 2 layers of the blue organza. And if you caught that this isn't on the bias for stretch, I redid it after I did the other panels to ensure that I didn't run out of fabric. When I was happy, I hand basted all of the layers of the fabric, which will keep them from shifting under the machine foot. And I continued sewing the next day while calling my mom for Mother's Day. I trimmed all of the overlays to the sides of the satin. To help the princess seams lay nicely, I ran a long straight stitch across the bust area, but within the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, which is here. And with that, the bodice is ready for pinning! I started by pulling on these long stitches to gather the bust area of the front side piece. Not enough to wrinkle the seam, just to shorten it a bit. Ow! I pinned and adjusted until I was happy. Anyone who watched the petticoat making video knows that I had lots of help making it from Cinderella's bird friends, and you may have noticed their absence. Well, the chipmunks and squirrels have taken over my feeder, and the birds won't come anywhere near it anymore. And now we have a new crop of miniature chipmunks running around. I took the time to iron all of the seams open, which from the inside doesn't seem to have much of an effect, but it does on the outside. To keep the seam allowance actually flat, I pinned it down and did a catch stitch going through only the interfacing so it wouldn't show on the outside. You want to see a chipmunk outsmart Emmy? Now to make piping! I cut 2-inch wide bias strips and stitched a rat tail cord on the inside using my zipper foot. I stitched this to the top and bottom of the outer bodice, clipping where needed around the curves, including the very sharp point at the front. I clipped and pinned all the seams back and did another catch stitch to keep all the raw edges in. And what happened to my finger? I had a boating accident.
Who boards a canoe that way?
What made you think I knew what I was doing?
The confidence, that's what.
I mean, what are you doing? I don't want to get my feet wet.
Well, you could have listened and then you wouldn't be in this precarious situation. Yeah. This is impressive. There's...
I made it!
She made it, folks.
Right. And maybe you should come next time with me. Right. First time success.
This is what we're calling success?
I'm in the boat.
Don't run into Nick. There's Nick. The scout dog. What, you're like half a horsepower, Sarah. You can take him.
So I bought a canoe, and there may be some room for improvement. Oh yeah, this tangent started because there's a bolt sticking out by the seat, and that's why I have a bandit on my finger. Also, I have a history of silly boating shenanigans. Also, this.
Since I have a lot of hand sewing to do today, and I have butterfly nails and butterfly socks, I thought I would get started on the butterflies in the background with my embroidery machine.
I used water-soluble stabilizer and some organza scraps, and loaded up the butterfly design that I digitized. I continued catch stitching the piping edges down. My embroidery machine needed a lot of babysitting that day, and can you tell that I hate having to restart a new thread all the time? It's supposed to be way shorter, but the butterflies are doing fairly well. I know the closure is supposed to be hooks or hand sewing, but I had to put this on by myself, so I went with a center lapped separating zipper. So I basted the center back, ironed that seam flat, and pinned the zipper in the center of that seam. I removed the basting stitches, and just look at how lovely this bodice color is. I'm so proud of this. I quickly hand basted the zipper in so I could try it on for a fit check, and that's where everything went wrong. My mock-up fit just fine.
That is unfortunate.
That's an understatement. So after an hour of wallowing in disappointment and all the wasted effort, we got more interfacing at Joann's and went for a walk at the park and got back to Bodice 2.0. I went with the second place lining because I used up all of the first choice.
Good morning. If the lighting in here looks a little bit weird, it's because I woke up 4 hours early and could not fall back to sleep, so here I am. Can't say I'm happy about that, but I didn't have much of a say in the matter. So I'm just gonna get working on Bodice round 2. Also, I made myself merch, and I know you're gonna ask, can you get your hands on this? And the answer is no, because there is only one. And also a bandana.
I made the mistake of using heat erasable pens on the iron fusible interfacing, so I stuck them in the freezer so that the marks would come back.
You know, this is gonna be identical to the last time I did it, so I'm just gonna stop filming now, and then we'll be back to where we started.
After a bit of bibbidi-bobbidi-boo-ness, it fits! So I finally finished sewing in the lapped zipper. I trimmed the top and pinned it out of the way. I folded over the seam allowance on the lining and pinned it in place. After some hand stitching, the top edge was done, and then I went to an estate sale and got an entire carload of vintage patterns and fabric for free, and managed to smuggle it all in without Patrick noticing, but he watches my videos, so surprise, and it's too late now! And then I added some boning to the boning channels that I made earlier. I used synthetic whalebone, aka plastic boning. I round the tips with scissors. You will never believe what I just found in our gutter. It's a crayfish! I folded the bottom edge over and hand-stitched the lining closed finally. And then, the surprise happened early, but more on that later.
We have a half albino squirrel.
Let's do some straps! I sewed tubes of organza, turned it right side out, pulled elastic through them with a safety pin, and stitched each one to secure it. I decided to top stitch the straps on because it will be covered, and I have been working on this project for long enough. And the base bodice is done! But also, it's nap time. Time for the Bertha! I cut my pattern on the fold. On the fold. I'm very sleep deprived. I cut it actually on the fold out of the iridescent organza, followed by the purple and aqua organzas. I had to order more silk organza for this, but not enough to cut it on the fold because it's expensive, so I sewed a center seam and ironed it flat. I layered the iridescent purple, aqua, and then the periwinkle Berthas, pinned them along the edge, and basted them together. I started pinning the center of the Bertha to the center of the bodice, with the Bertha flipped up to cover the seam allowance later. I hand-stitched this down, occasionally using my thimble. Don't worry, I'm an expert.
Ow.
I gathered the center front along that seam while I pleated the center back.
Just like to point out the fact that I am not left-handed, I just am stubborn. And I started this on the wrong side, and I'm just gonna go with it.
I gathered the bottom edge for the Bertha. And it's time to hand-stitch the rest of the Bertha down with my dominant hand this time. I started with the back pleats and went all along the rest. I tried to keep my stitches as invisible as possible. To take this droopy mess from this to this, I pinned and twirled little tacks and hand-stitched them down. This process was a lot of trial and error and using reference images, but also adjusting for my fabrics being thicker than the silk and the super organza. I decided that I didn't like the embroidered butterflies, so I switched to painted ones like the original. I went with blue, yellow, aqua, pink, and purple. When the paint was dry, I added rhinestones. Yay for sparkle, but also yay for almost being done! I pinned them to the Bertha, except that later I changed out the yellow ones as they just stood out too much. Also, let me take this moment to tell you that I made lavender lemonade last night, and it was lovely! Absolutely delicious. I can link the recipe below, and I thought it was totally worth hand squeezing 8 lemons. And now there's just one thing left to do! Okay, maybe 2 things. I leveled the hem and used my serger to do a rolled hem on each layer, but forgot to film any of that. Make sure to stay tuned for the surprise after the reveal. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Oh, and one more quick thing before the reveal. Here is footage of the squirrels literally destroying my bird buddy. I did eventually find the red piece, but then they came back and ate the camera. Ready for the surprise? Ta-da! Just kidding. Here he is! Our new little gentleman has been having a wonderful time learning lots of new things, and guess in the comments what you think his name is.
Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away. So let us dance this night away.